Hello, Oasis. We're back with another episode. I'm joined with Brennan and Ben.
Yeah.
We're in a new space. We had to move our studio real quick. So
Nice. But we might be here.
This might be permanent, maybe?
So we're still going to play with like this wall, you know. It's a little gray, little stark. Kind of looks gray on the camera, but it's a little blue in person. But if you're listening, you don't even understand. So that's tough.
That's a rough moment.
hopefully we sound the same.
Yeah, who knows?
Will you describe the color of the wall for those who are just listening, please? Like in real terms.
Ashy blue, baby blue. An ashy gray baby blue.
I could see this in a baby boy's room.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Picture that.
My firstborn child will have his nursery in this room because of this.
There you go. Like you guys are going to live at the church?
Yeah, it's called a parish, right? That's got him. With the snort. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, but we're in a new space, but same podcast.
That was good.
New topic, though.
New topic. We're actually doing a two-parter. And so just a little caveat here. We're talking about single, dating, engaged, and married. And today we're focusing on single and dating. Mm-hmm. And for both of these episodes, one, we're going to cover a lot, but we're not going to cover everything. And so if you have questions, like we'd love to chat with you through them. But hopefully this is just a good resource in how these next two episodes are going to go. Mm-hmm. We're just going to be talking about common questions that we all have with all of these life stages. I read a stat that 90% of the population in their 20s will travel through all of these really significant stages of life. And so how do we do them well? That's kind of the main topic today.
Yeah. I just always think these conversations, while they can sometimes feel less spiritual, because but they're not. They're so practical to the way that we live life. They're so practical to the season that most college students and young adults are walking through. Like, these are questions many people are wrestling with, and the church should bring just clarity and discernment and wisdom to some of these different seasons of life. And so, yeah, there's not always like very perfectly clear biblical advice on, say, dating, but there's practical wisdom on what it looks like to navigate that season. And so hopefully this can be helpful to you wherever you're at.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we're going to dive in. This episode, we're just covering singleness and dating, and we're going to start with singleness. And so just kind of...
What? Why are you laughing?
I don't like talking about singleness.
Do you not like talking about things that are a part of your life?
Welcome. We tricked you. This is actually Emily's counseling session.
Yeah.
So she paid to be here. Ben and I are her co-counselors today.
Yeah, I just did my taxes. Now I have to remember for next year I have to put this in my taxes.
All right. Sorry, go ahead.
But let's just start, what is the purpose of singleness? I think we got to start here.
Oof, man. I feel like that's a heavy question because I know how I could answer it. But it's different for every season. I think everybody starts in a season of singleness. Everybody has like nobody is born and hopefully committed to marriage, right? At birth, right? You have singleness. And for some people that ends in high school, right? As they find high school sweethearts, or some people it stretches into their 30s. Some people it goes their entire life. And so it really just depends on where you're at in your life and what desires God has laid on your heart. But in a blanket statement, singleness, like Paul will talk about in 1 Corinthians 7, is a gift, and it's a gift to be stewarded. And when we're stewarding that gift, it's meant to help us find our relationship and pursue that relationship with the Lord. Paul will talk about how when you involve other people in your life, especially in the sense of marriage, your priorities become diversified. Your focus, your attention, your energy, your resources split, right? In the fact that you now have other people, like when the scripture talks about the two will become one flesh, like it means that. So when you have a wife or you have that significant other, your priorities shift in that way so that you have to spend time and energy there. So singleness doesn't have that conflict. I think that's the first place I typically would start.
Yep. I think people get mad at when I say like a season of singleness is to pursue devotion to Jesus, because even if you're called to singleness for life, which some people are, there's an ending to that eventually. And then there's a season of singleness for others. It's all based off just time. How long is this going to last?
Yeah.
And then there's a process of praying through am I supposed to be single? Am I not supposed to be single? What is this? God, what have you given in my soul, my heart? But the whole purpose of it is just what does undistracted devotion to the Lord in this time right now look like for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you even said right there, you said the term called to singleness.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. Some people literally have this. I mean, you look at other denominations, which a denomination, right? There's Wesleyan Baptist and Methodist and Catholic and Lutheran. It's like some of those denominations have priests or pastors, leaders in their churches that have to be called to singleness in order to even be a priest or pastor or leader in their church. Yeah. And so there's an idea that God has called you into a life of being single, and what that means is not being married. Yeah. It's not a calling of life into no intimacy. Yeah. It's not a calling into a life of no relationships. It's a calling into a recognition that because of what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, that way you can use your time to be free of concern from worldly things, as Paul phrases it, which is very interesting. Yeah. To be devoted to the Lord.
And even in intimacy there, you mean like just relational
intimacy.
Relational
not sexual. Yeah. People have this misconception that intimacy means sex. Yeah. That's not at all.
Yeah. Most people hear that word and their mind instantly jumps to something. And we would tell you, get your mind out of the gutter. Get out of the gutter, man. Right? Come on. We're talking about relational.
Me and Brennan have intimacy.
We do. Relational intimacy. Yes. Relational intimacy. To be very clear.
Trying to open up people's minds to what intimacy
But Emily, what do you feel like is the purpose of singleness?
What's the purpose of your singleness right now?
This is my plan. It's just to spin every question.
Just make her feel
Ben and I will talk, and then we will direct it to Emily for the final thoughts. Emily?
Yeah. Well, a lot of you know, like the past couple of years, I've lived in 4 different states, and so for one of those years, I actually really did feel like a call to be single because if you look at that, there's no way you can be in a relationship with someone and it's healthy at all, when you're moving around that much. And so for me, it was I'm entering my first few years of full-time ministry. I'm leaving college. I'm navigating all of these life changes. And it's just been am I going to delight in the Lord first in all of it? When I'm moving and I leave my friends and I say goodbye, and am I going to move to a new place and seek the Lord first, or am I going to seek a relationship? And so that's been sometimes that's hard. It's a weight of a truth to carry. Yeah. When I see my friends from college that have been able to settle down and I've been moving around and they have kids now and I'm just existing, but
no, you're not just existing.
I'm
Emily.
Delighting.
There you go.
So that's a good word.
And one of the questions that we'll start to answer is just some misconceptions people have around singleness. And one of them is just the misconception that singleness is bad. Yeah. This is a narrative we have to fight back against. And it's a narrative that's prevalent in culture, right? Because you feel people who, if they're single, they feel like they're less than, they feel like they don't have as much value, they feel like they can't have community, they feel like there's something wrong with them. But it's also a narrative we have to fight in the church because obviously God loves marriage. He has created marriage as an institution to be able to reflect what is Trinitarian love. God deeply, deeply cares about marriage, but that doesn't mean he doesn't love singleness too. That doesn't mean he doesn't have singleness that has purpose. It doesn't mean singleness is bad. And so when we swing and say one thing is really good, we have to make sure that we don't discredit a different thing that God might also be doing.
That's good.
What are other misconceptions?
Yeah, I mentioned it in intimacy, right? Yeah. It just singleness means no intimacy, where intimacy really is closeness. Yeah. And you can have relational closeness, emotional closeness when you're single, for sure. It's companionship, it's confidentiality in life and living life with someone. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just a major misconception.
What about the pushback that singleness means that you won't have a family?
Yeah. I think it's a misconception on how we define family. That's good. Biologically, maybe. Yeah. But that's not how the church defines family. Yeah, we are brothers and sisters in Christ. We as the church, one of the things we hold to is that we are all connected and united by Christ.
Mm-hmm. And it's just different. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The family life will be different, but I've seen some single people walk out from family members who are single to walk out really, really beautiful, just singleness and valuing family in that. And
my first pastor that I had, single. Yeah. Still single to this day. And cared about people's marriages, cared about people, discipled people, had close friendships in the church. It was incredible to see him incorporate, as he was called to singleness, to make or recognize the church is his family, those he could walk alongside and those he could still pour into, whether married or not. Mm-hmm. It's really cool.
Yeah, maybe another question is, I think we call singleness a gift, but I think sometimes singleness doesn't feel like a gift.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do we, appreciate the gift in the seasons that God will have us in and also leverage that?
Totally. Just because we'll call it a gift and just because we'll say it's not bad doesn't mean it's easy for people, Right. There are people out there where singleness will be a breeze for you. You're probably called to singleness if you don't wrestle with it and you don't have like but if you have a desire to be married and you're in single, there's probably a chance that it's a hard season for you, and we don't discredit that at all, right? Just because it's a gift, just because God has you there doesn't God will place you in a lot of situations in which it will be difficult for you to navigate that. So yeah, just because it's a gift doesn't mean it's just all blessing and happy and butterflies, but there's a way you can steward that gift that leads you towards peace, that leads you towards purpose, that leads you back in your identity, that ends up, even if it's hard, becoming a blessing, where hopefully in God's grace you will look back on a hard season and say, I see what he was doing there and I'm grateful for it. I mean, every hard season I've ever had in my life, I don't look back on any of them and say, you know what, I wish I wouldn't have had to walk through that. I look back and I say, yeah, that was hard, but praise God that he led me through that hard valley,
that's good.
That I could now be different on the other side of it.
Yeah, that's good.
I think something that's been helpful for me has been, like, they say one of the main gifts of singleness is the fact that you have, like, low relational ties. Like, I'm pretty free, I don't have family, and then I have a lot of time. And I get to look back on my life and on seasons and to see the radical ways I got to be obedient. Because I didn't have to, like, care for a family. For sure. And so just, like, getting to, like, thank God in all of it, like, for allowing me to be part of something that he was doing in people's lives. And of just saying, like, thank you, God, like, maybe this season isn't one I want to be in, but, man, like, I got to see your faithfulness in so many different ways because you allowed me and invited me to be radically obedient.
Like, who knows if you even would be here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
that's real.
You know, if you're committed to a relationship in Colorado, there's probably a tie there which doesn't let you allow you to pick up and just move again halfway across the country to who knows.
Yeah.
What other singleness questions are there?
I think even in just that, I'm wondering if it's hard to see singleness as a gift, especially if you have a desire for marriage, which I think a misconception we have is that in singleness your desire for marriage is wrong, and that's not true. Like, you can have a desire for marriage and that's good. But the purpose of singleness is not to wait for marriage. If it was Jesus and Jesus was a failure in his single, like, he never got married. But then in that too is what we tend to do. And I think Ben Stewart uses this analogy in one of his books. Someone uses this. This is not a me thing. This is a thing that, right. Most things that we say are things we've learned or read or whatever. But we have the grass is greener mentality. And so it's hard for me to see singleness as a gift when my assumption is marriage is better, marriage is greater, and that's just not true. Yeah. It's different. And so it's in that then what happens and why we don't see it as a gift and why it maybe is harder, may not make it easier, is we miss out on the blessings that God has for us in the season that we're in by desiring for the blessings of what we think will come in a different season.
Yeah, that's good.
So how do we, like, fill ourselves with the truth of that? Because it feels like everywhere I look on media, every TV show I go to, even sometimes attending the church, it's very family focused. Yeah. And so how do I remain, like, content and filled with the truth that being single is not bad?
I would say one of the ways is to get resources in your life that can help inform you on that, right? So a podcast like this, other books out there that talk about it. Like, I know Rich Wilkerson has one, like Single and Secure. Like, there's books, there's resources. But the one I've seen most prevalently been helpful for people is to surround themselves with other single people. And that can be both helpful and hurtful. Yeah, it depends on who the single people are.
That's good.
We love to commiserate in suffering together. And there's a part of that that's beautiful if it leads us to healing. And there's a part of it that, man, humanity just loves to get together and wallow for the sake of wallowing. And so I've heard and experienced single people who get together and they just bag on their own singleness, and it just drags them both down. It's not encouraging, it's just defeating for people. So if you're going to surround yourself with single people, right, which I think is really wise, like to have some single friends if you're single, like one of the things there is, like, are they going to encourage each other? Are we going to pick each other up knowing we're in this season? Can we feed off of each other to be able to make the best of this?
How do you?
I think for me, community is really important. Yeah. And I think singleness, it's both a lie and a truth that, like, loneliness exists. Like, it's true that, like, you feel alone. The lie is where you find fulfillment and community. Because I think in singleness, it's really easy to believe that you can only feel relationally fulfilled with a relationship, like with a dating relationship or marriage relationship. Yeah. And what I found is that whenever usually the times where I crave the most to be in a relationship are the times where I'm the most lonely.
Yeah.
It's the times where I've been the most absent from community. And so I think just surrounding yourself with good friendships, or even just seeking to build those friendships, is a must, because it really does make a difference on how you view your singleness and how you view your loneliness.
Do you find that like it's helpful for you to have people who are also single, like in your, or is that like something you've sought out as a single person, or are you like it doesn't mind you if you hang out with most people who are in relation, like if you're always fifth, sixth, third, fifth, what's my math here? Third, fifth, seventh, ninth, 11th wheel.
Just a wheel.
Yeah, just a wheel.
The extra wheel. I think it really does make a difference on having single people in your life. And my family probably listens to this podcast, and I'm not throwing them under the bus by means whatsoever. But I think it's really good when your group is mixed, like when there's a lot of couples and there's a lot of singles and you get to be together. I know sometimes it's hard to like go home and to see my family because I'm now like on one side of the family, the last like cousin who's over 18 to like be in a relationship or be married, and I'm just like hanging out at the kid table.
And the grandma's just like socially shaming you. Like,
yeah.
Emily, when are you bringing a boy home?
Yeah. And so those times where it's like,
real.
you're kind of like
happens.
the only one, it's like you like put the smile on your face and you just nod and wave.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it's helpful to have both. I do think like part of like, if we believe that marriage is the sign of God's like covenant love, like then single people still need to be around married people, because I still think that you can participate and see the love of God through marriage, even if it's not your own.
I like that.
Yeah, that's good. And I mean, so we talk about community, but also just like what will help you in this season is do the thing in which Paul said to do. He says, I don't say these things in verse 35 of 1 Corinthians 7. I'm saying this for your own good, not to restrict you, but that you may live in a right way in undivided devotion to the Lord. And so like the Greek word there is to get really good at being beside Jesus. Yeah. And so like in singleness, what will help you in that is, what does it look like for you in the time, whatever that you have, that now you can be concerned for the Lord's affairs, where married people, he says, are concerned for the world's affairs. He says, get really good at being beside Jesus, and that will help.
And we said this is going to be a fairly random podcast, because now I'm going to throw something in there that's also really random, is I think it's very important for single people to also protect their singleness, right? There's usually some sort of like cultural or society respect for the family unit. So like the way you work your job, the way other people expect of you, and all these, like your singleness and your time also matters.
Yes.
Right? When you're working your job, but your boss has 2 kids they got to get home to, like that's not just an excuse for you to pick up every shift. Or like when you're at the church and you're single, that doesn't mean you have to volunteer in every single program. Like just because you have time doesn't mean you need to have that time be consumed by everything else because someone else has a family. I think there's a really good balance. I think it's Peter Scazzaro that talks a little bit about this, where it's just like, man, protect your singleness too. Like let there be space for you able to just be with the Lord and enjoy that season, rather than just have everything else consume it because other people are busy too.
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe let's kind of start to transition our gears a little bit. So let's say like, well, let's not say I am single.
let's say
Brennan, let's say you're single.
Okay. Sorry, Al. This is just for an exercise.
We're pretending.
So can I search for a relationship when I'm single? And if I can, how should I best go about that?
Yeah.
Is that the right question?
How would you?
Yeah.
Do you want a relationship? Is God like real legit? Because like, can you? Feels like an easier question than like, have you actually wrestled with like, do I want this? Why do I want this? And God, do you have this for me? I would start there, and then we can go to, can you? Absolutely.
Yeah. So yours would be more
start
of a
first.
Yeah, with a prayer.
Yes.
Seeking.
I think so.
Okay.
That's where I wrestled.
Yeah.
Like relationally, before I was a follower of Jesus, it was just really, really unhealthy. And then I became a Christian, and guess what was really still unhealthy? How I pursued relationships until it changed.
Yeah.
And a part of that was praying through like, this desire is in my heart. God, is it a healthy desire right now? Is it a healthy desire overall for my life? Is this what you want for me? And then show me what this would look like.
Yeah.
But I had to start there first. And then it's can you pursue a relationship in singleness? Like, yes.
Yes.
And then what was the follow-up to the second part?
How do we go about this? Like,
Yeah.
What are the best ways to do this?
To me, like everything ever, there has to be this healthy balance of intentionality, yet not all consuming. Yeah. because it's so easy to swing the pendulum where we're in the season of singleness and we desire it and we feel like God is going to provide that. And so we just get all consumed and we show up in every space and every place. And every time we open our phone, it's just like man or woman hunting. Like it's just like constant. We cannot get that off our mind. And that is no longer healthy, even if you feel like that's what God has you for. Or I see it the other way where it's like, yeah, I think I'm supposed to be in a relationship and I think that's something that God has for me. But I've never left my couch. I have no conversations with people of the opposite sex, right? There's no input that I'm trying to, like, there's no effort. But we'll see if God just, like, puts someone in my life. And so between these two extremes, there has to be some kind of balance where it's like, yeah, how do I healthily pursue something that I think I desire based on what God's put in me as a desire?
Yep.
And so for each person, it's unique.
Yep.
But should you use dating apps? Maybe. Should you ask people on dates? Maybe. Should you find mutual friends who then can set you up? Maybe. Should you do only that? Probably not.
That's good.
Like,
that's good.
I don't know. Do we have other thoughts?
No, that's great. I agree.
You have to do something, but don't do like
agreed.
Just don't let it consume you.
Yes. In either way.
It just, there has to be some
good.
sort of balance where you're not just seeking that, but you're not stagnant either.
Yeah. That's good.
Because if you're stagnant, it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like maybe it will. Maybe God is kinder than I am, and He will have the pizza delivery person ring your doorbell, and they're just cute and single and love the Lord.
Love it.
And don't work for Domino's because Domino's is kind of trash.
Yeah, I'm just gonna order Papa John's pizza be delivered at Emily's house once a week.
Once a week, and then pray
And just pray
over it.
I'm gonna gain like 20 pounds.
Maybe you should switch pizza places so we get a good variety.
I need a variety. Don't just look in one spot. Maybe we can add that.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you add Jimmy John's in there?
Yeah, for sure. Jimmy John's is phenomenal.
But that's also hard because I think when you become a Christian, you look at friends who it's like, okay, I met a lot of people on dating apps, which nowadays dating apps are way more normative than they were a handful of years ago.
Yep.
And the narrative around them is different.
Yep.
At least from my perspective, where it was this like hookup culture, it was this kind of taboo thing. Now it feels almost to me just exclusively a way that people meet. Like it just happens so frequently now. But like as a Christian, it's like, can I be on a dating app? It's like, probably if you steward that space well.
Right. It's like everything. Is it in and of itself a bad thing? No. How are you using it?
But then people are like, well, I know a lot of my friends meet at the bars. And it's like, man, I know that's a tough spot for a lot of Christians because they can't handle that temptation or they don't have a community that can handle that temptation. And so it's like, man, what if do I have to meet someone at church? I think church is a great place to meet someone.
I would start there, but is that the only?
But it's not the only place. Yeah. So it's convoluted, but
yeah, I think it's okay to relax about having like hard, fast rules.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that's also what makes dating difficult is you can go the other side and not have enough healthy boundaries around what it looks like to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
But
maybe let's kind of push in here. Like, what is the purpose of dating?
Depends who you ask.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, really. Some people legit think just to have fun.
Yeah.
Just to have fun.
And would you be okay with the person who says that?
I, in my 36-year-old, having had been in that season of where dating was just fun, no.
Yeah.
Probably just depends on who it is. Like the why would have to legit. If the reason was only just to have fun, no, not at all. I would not be comfortable with that. No.
And why would you say that?
I think because when I say I'm looking for fun, there's an aspect in that I feel like I'm looking for either distraction, something that takes me away from what life is, pleasure in a way that I'm or fulfillment in a way that I'm pursuing it in a other person that's not Jesus. Yeah. It's either a distraction, entertainment, or fulfillment that is not especially in fulfillment aspect, that what Jesus has to offer. So solely fun for me, no.
Yeah.
That's why I said for me.
And for me, I also push back on this idea that dating can have the purpose of just for fun, because I feel like it lends itself very quickly to objectification, that they're there for my enjoyment and my pleasure. Yeah. And when we have a mindset of objectification, it does something in us. It corrodes us. It destroys the heart of God in us, yet it also has negative consequences on others.
You're using people as a thing.
There's
and not
someone on
people.
the other side of that fun relationship where if they're not in it for the same reason or if they have different agendas, man, that's really, really hurtful to other people.
Yeah.
And so that's why at the front end, you probably need to DTR, define the relationship.
DTR that stuff, man.
But even if you're both in the relationship for just fun, I'm probably going to put I'm not a betting man, right? I'm a Wesleyan, but like if I was, I'm probably going to put a bet down that that's not going to end well. Don't usually see two people just dating for fun where it's like they mutually part ways and both just leave without any trauma or scars.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I heard it best said that like the purpose of dating is like the process of evaluation. Yeah. And so I think I grew up in a culture where it was like the purpose of dating is marriage, and you shouldn't even accept a first date if you're not going to marry the guy. I'm just like,
welcome to
I'm just like,
private school.
That was before private school. And then I get to
man.
private school and I was just like, oh my gosh. And it's just like, I had all these internal conflicts of like, someone would ask me out and I would have no clue who they are. I'm just like, Lord, you need to let me know if I'm supposed to marry them because I can't go out with them if you say no.
Yeah.
And I think like when we look at it as a process of evaluation, it gives us freedom to say yes to opportunities, but it also helps us know that we can say no.
Yeah.
Because you're not, the chances that you know on a first date, whether or not you should go on a second date, I don't know. Kind of just depends on how the date goes.
Yeah. And that's the evaluation piece is what am I evaluating exactly? Is eventually get to a point of is marriage an opportunity or a possibility here?
Oh, for sure.
For me to marry them, and am I ready?
Yeah.
To a degree.
And that there's we want to date with intentionality, but not necessarily intensity. You know, like I think like intensity, this is where Christians get weird, is we show up on the coffee date and we're like, hey, I'm trying to pursue marriage, you trying to pursue marriage. And then all of a sudden you're 3 dates in and you're like, okay, let's talk about engagement. Like, it's like, I don't think we need that kind of intensity for most people, right?
Most people.
There are cases, right? I had a friend, they met and they were married within like 4 months. But everybody in our community was like, yes, this makes sense. This works. You two were meant to be together. Like it was just so, but for most of the cases, you don't need to date with that kind of intensity.
Yeah, that's good.
It's just like be intentional. Ask the right questions. Try to figure out who their character is, date in community, do all the things, but we don't have to have this drastic sense of pressure all the time where it's like, man, what are we doing here? Are we moving forward? Are we like it's like
why did that where did the pressure come from? Why do we feel that?
Partially probably from the church. Yeah. I mean, sure, right? Like I think there is the healthy boundary of there should be purpose to marriage. Purpose that is an evaluative, or purpose to dating. That is like the evaluation for marriage, right? You're trying to figure out if this is a good fit. But man, we just take things so to the extreme. We just get aggressive.
And some of it is like real to a degree.
Yeah.
Right? We take things that are real and true and like times 1,000 them in intensity. Yeah. So like, man, what if I date this person for 3 to 6 months, like, and it's not right? Well, I just wasted 6. No, you didn't waste it. Yeah. You know, but that's what we think. It's, well, I wasted it, and now if I could have, you know, so we build that in our heads, and so then we feel like we have to get intense with it and do all the things right away.
And honestly, I knew within the first couple of months of dating my wife that we would probably get married. Yeah. I just knew. It was different than any other relationship. There was nothing in my mind that would ever like have come between us. But we still dated for 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like 2.5 years past this idea where it's like, yeah, I'll probably marry this person. But we were still figuring out the evaluation process, and we were still going through a season of life where we weren't ready to get married and we weren't mature enough to get married, and our community was still wanting us to wait. And so just because you know and you're being intentional doesn't mean you got to put a ring on it right now and then get married in 3 months. Yeah. Be intentional, not necessarily intense.
Yeah, that's good.
What boundaries should we have placed when, like, in this process of dating, like spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically? What are some good boundaries to have?
I would add relationally.
Relationally.
I think if you're solely only spending time with that person, that's really unhealthy.
Say it again for the people in the back.
So it's called dating in community. Like because what happens is in our intensity, we dive into this relationship because we want to assess, and then we get super infatuated. Yeah. And then all we've learned is actually to become codependent on this person, which when that turns into marriage is insanely unhealthy because one, in that, just because you're spending all your time with them doesn't mean you're actually becoming friends and learning about them.
Yeah.
And then in that also is if you're spending all your time with them, you don't have friends.
Yep.
You don't. And that's insanely healthy. So dating community, and then also that allows the people in your life who are your community and friends to speak into that relationship. So boundaries in relationally, don't just spend time with the person you're dating, would be one I'd say.
I cannot tell you how many times the community around Allie and I were able to help us in where we were at within our relationship, whether it was in dating, engagement, or marriage. If we would not have had that community, man, I don't even know if we'd be in the space we're in right now.
Agreed. Same.
We needed it.
I dated a gal before I started dating Abby, and we dated for...
What was her name?
Just kidding. For 4 months. Put me on the spot. And it was a long-distance relationship. It was mission goggles for sure. And I wasn't able to see it until she come out to visit, and I had one of my closest friends watch us, see us, whatever, get to know, and she left, and he came and was like, this isn't right.
Yeah.
For many reasons.
Yeah.
And speaking into that. And then dated Abby, and again, community affirmed.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, let's talk about other boundaries. Physically, you need to have boundaries. And it depends on where you're at in your walk with Jesus. I cannot sit here and say this, you should never have the door closed. You should never watch a movie together. You should never hug. You should never kiss. Like, those kind of boundaries lean so far into purity culture where we get obsessed with boundaries and not with love. When we're obsessed with love, when we love God and we begin to love our brothers and sisters in Christ, we care more about the actual actions and the consequences than we do the rules. So when it comes to boundaries physically, where are you? Do you have history with sexual, sin? Are you currently struggling with sexual sin? Can you two be in the same room together with the door closed? Can you kiss without going beyond what is a healthy boundary? Figure out where you're at and then set boundaries together. Yeah. Set boundaries that are very clear that you both have agreed upon, and then come back to and reassess your boundaries because you're going to break your boundaries. Boundaries are there to help you, but we're humans and things happen. And so when you fall short, don't just throw it all away and say, well, it didn't work. Continuously come back. I don't know if it's for you weekly or monthly or just consistently. Come back and say, are these boundaries, the physical boundaries, are they working? Are they helping us to love one another, to prepare well for marriage? Are they helping us to glorify God? Are they what's best for us as a couple?
Yeah, that's good.
And as you answer those questions, then I think you can tweak and add and change and subtract boundaries that will actually bless your relationship, not just in dating, but also into marriage. When you practice good physical boundaries in dating, it is amazing preparation for physical boundaries in marriage. But when you consistently break or don't set boundaries physically in dating, you have set yourself up to fail when you're married because you don't know how to set boundaries with other people. Yeah. And if you think for a second that the enemy who wanted you to sleep with your girlfriend or your boyfriend isn't gonna turn around and want you to sleep with your coworkers and that person at Starbucks and your wife's best friend, man, you are just being lied to. You have to learn what it means to say no to your fleshly desires. Yeah. And the Lord is gracious. He'll lead you in that, but it's going to take some work.
Yeah, that's good. Agreed.
What other boundaries? Emotional, spiritual.
The spiritual ones are hard.
We're getting in
Emily, what do you think?
That's why I asked the questions.
I know. What have you heard? What do you like?
I think one of the things is that whoever you are in relationship with, no matter they're not your counselor. Your husband or wife is not your counselor. Your fiance is not your counselor. Only your counselor is your counselor and the Holy Spirit because he's called counselor.
Or even primary spiritual friend.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And counselor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
And I think something that I have to navigate in all of my relationships, depending on the season, depending on who it is just what does vulnerability look like to where I'm being authentic, to where I'm being myself, but also I do have a role in honoring my brother and sister in Christ. And sometimes that means not sharing every single detail of my life.
Yep. Yeah.
And I think part of dating and part of this evaluation process is recognizing that just because you're in that relationship does not grant you all of these rights.
Yes.
That's great.
Dating with autonomy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're an
individual person.
Yep. Yeah, you haven't entered into the covenant, and yet we treat dating as in we've entered into this covenant once we get to a certain point. And so even there, it's I think it's okay to commit to opening up slowly, So like what do mental boundaries look like? Don't consistently talk about or think about marriage. I think it creates an unhealthy level of dependency and intimacy, emotional intimacy that you aren't ready for or should enter into in a dating relationship to a degree at some, like there's a point in which things cross over, and it's, you got to get to that point where it's like, are we compatible emotionally?
Yeah.
Like that's a part of the evaluation part. But if you're doing that within the first, I mean, I'm not going to put a time frame on it. Immediately, that's unhealthy. It can get really unhealthy really quickly because, I don't know if we want to go here yet. This doesn't really have to do with boundaries, but it has to do with how we treat breakups.
Sure.
Can we go there? Is that okay?
Go ahead, man.
We did a series called Bad Blood, however long ago.
Yeah.
Go back to it. I thought it was one awesome series that we did, and
I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, you let me speak on dating, and I think what happens is we just assume that the longer we've dated, the harder it is to break up, and the severity of the hurt isn't dependent just on the amount of time we've spent together or how long we spent together. It's what did we do? Like, what are the things that we talked about? How deep are we in physically, emotionally, spiritually, or mentally? So the severity isn't just on time, it's the actual actions in which we spent doing and what we talked about, what we did in the midst of that relationship. Also, breaking up isn't a failure. And I think that's a myth that we think in dating. It's like, if I break up, that means I've failed this. Like, that's not true.
Or even if you want to think of it a little bit differently, maybe it is a failure in the sense that you didn't achieve the end objective. But like Steve said, let that failure inform you, not define you. Right?
I wouldn't. It's semantics, but I wouldn't use that.
I know, but I just think like some people are like, well, yeah, it was a failure. Like we wanted to get married and we're not, so we failed, right? And it's like, but if you let that not define you as like, hey, good. I'm a failure and I will never get married and I can't do this and I'm a bad or instead you say, hey, what can I learn from this? Yeah. What went wrong? What was the problems in the relationship? Yes. Where did I fall short? Where did they fall short? Like that, I think is a super healthy process.
Yeah. What are you looking for when you're looking for someone to date? How do you know what to look for, Emily, in someone who is single?
I think first and foremost, and I think it's cringy to say this, but it's also first and foremost, you have to follow Jesus.
For sure.
And especially being a pastor, you really have to follow Jesus for me, to go on a date with you, because I know what it's like spiritually, to be pouring out, and I need a partner. Yeah. And so I think if you're not a pastor, maybe you don't need someone that's literally burning on fire for Jesus. You can just have them a small flame. That might be fine. But I know spiritually I need a partner. I also just look for someone who's a gentleman. I've seen a lot of people that weren't gentlemen. Yeah. And I also just know man, I have worth, I have value, and I don't want to be in a relationship for the rest of my life where I have to question the worth and value. Yeah. And part of that marriage covenant, is God's reconciliation with all of humanity. He literally calls the church beautiful. Yeah. As he prepares them, even though they're not beautiful, even though we have all of this brokenness within us, and God's love makes them beautiful. Yeah. And man, if that's what marriage is, then I don't want to have to question if I'm worthy.
That's good. Yeah. I got the 4 C's. Ready?
All right, hit us. Christ,
character, charisma, and chemistry. Ooh. So do they know Jesus? Yeah. You just said they have, what's your character? Mm-hmm. Don't marry someone who's mean. Please don't if they're mean to you or mean to their friends and it's consistent.
If they're mean to anyone.
Don't
talk about red flags.
Man, red flag.
If they are mean to the server or to the customer service rep, come out. Eventually they will be mean to you.
That is in their heart, and it will come out eventually. Yes, it absolutely will. So character is important. And even in the character side of it too, is how are they pursuing Jesus? Chemistry. I think there's aspects of if you're bored hanging out with them, that's not great.
Yeah,
that's not great.
I've been there, man.
Yep. And then there's the Riz. And there's a reality, my Riz is not for everyone, but it worked on Abby.
There you go.
There's an allure, and some of that's personality, some of that's attractiveness, not just physically, but just who you are as a person. And there's aspects of charisma that I think are really, really important. Yeah. Where it's, do you like Abby had to get over, and there's aspects of this that and some of it is your list of what you're looking for. But I'm a loud, rambunctious person.
What?
And for her, that was really tough. But not a deal breaker, because there were other aspects of who I was for sure. Jesus, loved her, loved people, and then we just fit really well together in different things. So it's there's aspects. It's okay to know what you're looking for. Yeah, don't be really highly aggressive with it and weird about it.
Dude, there's so many times where like I'll do something or I'll be something and just like the fact that Allie's just like okay with that, you know? Or there's other times where you see someone else and like they're in a relationship or they're married and I was like, I would never be able to stand that.
Yep.
But God has gifted that person
Yep.
and he's called that person to be okay with it. And it's just like that's the beauty of marriage is they're navigating it and that's their coupling together. But it's funny.
Do you want to get into how to break up with people or no? Or are we just going to skip that for a later time?
We've been rolling for so long.
Okay, we'll do it for a later time.
We could.
No, just DM the Oasis account and someone will respond to you.
DM Brennan.
DM Brennan. You can find me personally. I mean, we might as well. At this point, we're going long. We're not going to get... Should we just do it real quick?
I mean, that's up to you.
That's up to Emily. We'll let Emily choose.
Real quick.
Okay, real quick.
Be honest.
Yeah.
Be complete. If there's a reason, like even like of why you are breaking up with them, if you feel like one, it's not. If it's not a character assassination, if it's like this is like just they'll want to know to some degree, and then how do you do that gently?
Yeah.
Take responsibility. That like maybe it's a you thing too. So in the honesty, it could be you thing. Don't say God said so. That's stupid and a cop out.
Yeah.
Sorry for being aggressive. Tell them in person.
Yeah.
Stop texting, and then with that, if you ghost someone, stop it. That's mean. Yeah. And almost like I want to say evil. I won't go there. Don't go someone. Yeah. Don't ignore someone. And then just don't wait. If you know, you know. Yeah. Be gentle with it.
Yeah, so many people stay in relationships because they fear breakup, but man, you're wasting your own time if you know this isn't your person, and you're wasting their time. It's not kind to you. It's not kind to them. Yep. And breaking up is hard.
It's super hard.
It's always going to be hard.
Not downplaying the reality that it's tough.
It's always going to be hard, but there is a way that we can do it that I think can glorify the Father and that can be loving and kind.
Yep.
But it honestly has to have truth.
Yeah, clarity is kindness.
Yeah. It has to be truthful. It has to be honest. It has to be clear. Like these things are helpful to you and to others to gain closure. Yeah. But someone probably needs to break up with someone after listening to this.
Usually that's almost always the case, actually.
People are in a lot of bad relationships and it happens, but that doesn't mean you have to be stuck in it.
And not even bad, but maybe just in a wrong one. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah. True.
Some people are bad ones.
All right, we got to let Emily finish this podcast.
Yeah.
What's your final
my final advice or word of wisdom?
Whatever you want to say. However you want to finish my statement.
Gosh. I think that the Lord speaks to all of us in relationships. I really think he does. And I think for some of us listening, you're really waiting for the Lord to just audibly say go out with this person, break up with this person, do this with this person. And I don't really think that's how God's going to speak into your relationship. But I think when you feel tension, when you feel like you're driving on a rumble strip, that's usually your sign that something's not right. And so if you're listening and you kind of feel like your car swerved off the freeway and you're hitting the rumble strip, I just invite you to pray. Whether it's you are single and you really just don't know what to do in this season, or you're in a relationship and you need to break up, or God's calling your relationship to something else. I just invite you to pray. And I invite you in all of it. One, seek community, seek their voices, and seek delight. The Lord has created you to delight in him, and there's delight all around you, not just in people, but all around you. So
all right, we gotta end there. Little long,
so
but good stuff in there.
I like it.
All right, peace out, guys.